Okay, y'all, iPhone has done something, and I'm not even into iPhone like that. I just got this iPhone because my son has one. iPhone has done something to their whatever that makes the microphone on the phone like have that white noise when you're not using an earplug. It's not just me, it's happening to other iPhone users too. So I don't know exactly why that is, but that is what it is. Okay, so I really wanted to show y'all. You guys, look. Can you see? Do I have a book? I need to put this on top of something. Hey, Marisa. Shout out to my homie for helping me across the finish line with this guide. There they are. Star Craving Millennial has been absolutely, hold on, y'all. Has been absolutely instrumental in getting us to the finish line with this guide. So Stark Raving Millennial gave me some really great feedback as a multi-year user of the guide. And I don't want it to single page. There we go. So y'all, the order of the guide is changed a little bit. Again, shout out to Stark Raving Millennial for holding it down. So this is the guide, y'all. If you haven't got your iCals yet, get them. I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. So this is still kind of, that's a little bit better. Okay. So if you can see here, we kind of moved everything around. So collect and explore my sidereal birth chart. Divination for Liberation, Sidereal Astrology Essentials. The 2024, ooh, there's a misalignment there. You see what happens when you look at it? These should all be down. Hold on, let me write a note. See, down to the wire. We're fixing minute things like text not aligned correctly in a cell, but we're gonna fix it. Put a little note, align, text, cell, content, page. Okay, so what I really wanna show y'all, I got a friend. What I really wanna show y'all is this. Oh, I skipped it. Everything's at the front, still getting used to it. Okay, you guys, look at this. So does anybody notice something new? Raise your hand, class, if you notice something new here. Who sees it? Does anybody see what it is? Hey, Shar. Does anybody see what's here? Yes, they're roles or archetypal names for each of the signs. So if you want to screenshot this, do it now because I'm getting ready to move the camera. If you want to screenshot it, here's your chance. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, So this is one of those things that I've learned just by being a practicing astrologer who sees clients. It's one thing for ideas to exist in theory, to have these names here and be like, ah, yes, Capricorn the caretaker. But understand these roles twofold. These are roles, like if you've got a lot of placements in a particular sign. Hey, Reinstate of Mine and Ryan Lewis and Sarah in the Redwoods. These roles are primarily speaking to roles we have had to take on. Let me explain it this way. Your birth chart is a picture of the environment you were born into. And because of the way the human psyche, excuse me, and identity is formed, we cannot make a distinction at first between ourselves as a separate individual and our environment. Our birth chart is showing us and naming for us in deep specificity. And when I say birth chart, I'm talking about your Divination for Liberation Sidereal birth chart. Okay, this is very specific to my system. If you would like to know how the birth chart functions in other systems, you'll have to ask the people that use them. I don't know. But this is specifically for Divination for Liberation, Sidereal Astrology, my framework, TM. Your birth chart is showing the way that your environment and the people in your environment related to you. And because of the way the human psyche and mind and identity is formed and functions, the relationship that the people in your environment have with you is the relationship you internalize and have with yourself, right? So each of these signs are talking about relationship dynamics that we take on as roles because of how we are related to in our environment. So for example, I am Capricorn Sun and Mercury. And if you see here, Capricorn says the caretaker, resourcefulness, denial, and repression, thus the gift, wound and coping strategy. And then the kind of work of Capricorn is to have enough, or the thing we're contending with, right? So I have the role of the caretaker because there was not enough of something, right? If you have Capricorn, the question always is, whether it's Capricorn rising, Capricorn moon, Capricorn, whatever, intranet being done. You have Capricorn because there was not enough of something in your environment. There was something about your experiences where you had to repress or deny your own needs in order to take care of someone else, or to take care of yourself, or there was someone in your environment who could not do the adult thing of decentering their feelings and needs enough to be fully present with yours. I'm gonna say that again. When you have Capricorn placements, whatever it is, this is a statement about your environment, the people in it, and how they related to you, right? And so Capricorn speaks to experiences where somebody in your environment could not set aside their feelings and their needs long enough to be fully present with yours. And as a matter of fact, when Capricorn has feelings or needs, somebody else's feelings or needs, likely a caregiver, or it might be a sibling, right, who is disabled or who has high needs, right? And so as an adult, we become caretakers, because rather than I'm gonna show you Queen Exodia. Rather than I'll put it to you this way. Capricorn is deprived, oh, there it is, of being the feeler, right? Queen Exodia wants to see Libra, which is down here, the tactician. And Taurus is, oops, the connector. Now, y'all know me. These the words in 2024. When we get to the 2025 guide, these words might be something completely different. But that's how it is. It should be updated. It should be evolving. It should not be rigid and fixed. It should reflect the changing culture, times, and consciousness. So anyways, y'all, this is Punjabi Fool. This is from the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide, and it is one of the Divination for Liberation Sidereal Astrology Essentials tables in the Sidereal Zodiac sign. So if we go back down, all right. You see, and I gotta change that too. See, all of these things I've noticed when I'm looking at it with somebody else. So I'm here today to answer your questions. What questions do you have? Very good question. I met guys, she black. There are, hold on. Change div for okay. First question. I met guys, she black. So there are two ways to experience the Divination for Liberation Sidereal Astrology Guide 2024 version. First is to download a PDF. That will be available tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central. I will post everywhere that I exist. If you are on my email list, you will get an email. If you are a member of the Podia community, you will see a post in the Podia community. If you follow me on Twitter, good luck, but I will be posting there. I will be posting in my Instagram story. I will be posting on my Instagram timeline. If you would like a hard copy like this, you will be able to pre-order a printed and bound hard copy of the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide tomorrow, okay? So the way the pre-orders work is you get about a week and a half or 2 weeks, depending, to secure your guide. So when you go to the website, you will pay for your hard copy. You'll add your shipping information. And when I get them in my hands from the printer, which will probably be early January, I will ship them out in the order the orders were received. Anyone who pre-orders a hard copy will get a complimentary PDF delivered to their email once they complete their pre-order purchase. I'm going to say that again. If you decide to purchase or pre-order a printed and bound copy of the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide, you will automatically receive a link to download the PDF version when you make your purchase, okay? Lots of questions here. I'm going to come back to your question, Punjabi Fool, about your sidereal birth chart. Okay, yes, it is like a holiday. It feels like a holiday to me. Rosie Rising. So altogether, the printed version is 84 pages. So this is the 2023 version, but it's going to be printed exactly the same. Same components. You get your monthly layout, your monthly summary, your fill in the blanks, and your monthly questions. And all of the information that you need to fill this out is inside the guide. The only thing that you need to do is to follow the instructions provided in the guide where it says start here. Don't skip start here. Because if you skip start here, you won't know how to use it, okay? How much? The PDF is $25 and the printed version is $41. And again, pre-ordering the printed version, you get a complimentary order the printed and bound version, you get a complimentary PDF delivered to your email, okay? What else here? There was another question. Yes, Stark Raving Millennial has been helping me with the guide. He's read every. Hey, Kat. Um, um, Sorry, y'all. Yeah, somebody keep calling my phone. When you purchase the hard copy of the 2024, meaning pre-order the printed and bound version of the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide, you will automatically be, oh wait, I want to go back to the contents. You will automatically receive a PDF download complimentary in your email while you wait for your guide to ship. The printed and bound guides will be shipped January in the order that I receive the orders. Someone's asking, will I be putting out the 2024 mobile transits? You betcha. Let's see. I'm very pleased. I made very pretty images, and so I have to show you. See, I just posted this. This is also available, 2024 Sidereal Transits iCals. Download the dates and times for sidereal zodiac planet and moon transits right into your phone's calendar. And this is what it looks like in Google Calendar when you import the calendar file into your calendar. And this is the planetary station. So you see here, you get all your Mercury direct, you get all your aspects, you get the dates and the times. Okay. So that's what we're working with. Poet in Satin. You guys are so excited, and I'm so excited. I mean, I was already excited, but now I'm also excited that you guys are so excited. Thank you guys. I'm so excited. I've been working so hard. You know, I really came on here because I wanted to read to y'all my kind of 2024 sermon. But I'm gonna stick to my original plan of how I'm going to release that, and y'all will just have to wait. But if you don't know, every year I release a Div for Lib astrology informed word for the year. The word for 2023 was the power of self-determination. And the word for 2024 is don't let them make you forget. Yeah, Poets in Satin, I'm not gonna lie, 2024 version is, it's definitely top tier. And of course, it should improve every year, but this is like, it's a reflection of the mental and emotional space, the spiritual and emotional healing I've done has made, right? Like I've done so much work and have been so diligent in creating a safe space for myself in my body. And just as I was really getting into writing the content for the 2024 guide, it's like I reached this like really important tipping point where all of that work seemed to result in this like really new creative space for me. And it's reflected, I mean, the creative space I'm in is reflected here. It's reflected in every part of the guide. It's reflected in all of the things that you're going to see me doing over the next month or two related to 2024 and over the course of 2024. So, yeah, there was one more thing I wanted to say. Yeah, anyways, I went over it really quickly, but I wanted to repeat it. The word for 2024 is don't let them make you forget. And I did this the same way that I did it in the 2023 guide. So in the 2023 guide, when you get to December, 2023 guide, December, this monthly summary is meant to be a looking back over the year from the end of the year. So obviously I wrote this in 2022, right? And in 2022, when I got to December, what the word that came to me was, what is 2023 gonna look like once we get to December? When we're able to turn around and look back over the course of 2023, what will it look like? So 2024, don't let them make you forget, is when we get to the end of 2024, looking back from December over the year, what is it that we will have experienced? How is it that we should understand what we've experienced? And all of this is informed by my understanding of the astrology of the whole year. And it is informed by, you know, just the spiritual zhuzh I'll be working with. So yeah, if you're just joining here, we're talking about my 2024 content. Yes. If remember the timelines, the 2024, the 2023 timeline and horoscope, those will be returning. And yeah, if there's anything else that you want to see for 2024, just let me know. Send me an email, comment on whatever 2024. Yeah. I am Nicole. Melanie Davis says, I love that word. It dismantles all of the intentional mantras that have been shoved down our throats. Quote, surrender and let go. Absolutely. Absolutely. They tell us it's not that deep. It's not that serious. Why are we making a big deal? Get over it. It was what it was. It is what it is. It's dismissive, right? Like our whole culture is dismissive. And it's meant to say, I'm not going to share with you in the emotional remembering of what you have experienced. Oof, that is a real word. That's a real word. The dismissiveness is meant to say, I'm not going to give you the dignity. I'm not going to give you the humanity. You know, I was watching a talk with John A. Powell and Bell Hooks, and they were talking about othering and belonging, which is such a huge theme for 2024. When you read the 2024 guide, when I publish the word for 2024, don't let them make you forget, you're going to see me talking and writing and speaking a lot about belonging, so much about belonging. That is the big theme for 2024, belonging and acceptance and all of that stuff. Okay, y'all, all right. The questions. For beginners who like to read natal charts, what are the first top 2 or 3 succinct things we can look at to make sense of a chart? I find myself overwhelmed with the possibilities. So I can't answer that question unless you have committed to, well, I can't answer that question, period, end of sentence. The first thing that anyone should do when approaching a birth chart and astrology is to commit to a system, commit to a teacher, commit to a method, right? Because every system, every teacher, every method has a framework, philosophical reference point, spiritual context, political, all of those things are what is informing how you should approach a birth chart, right? So I know it seems like I'm not answering your question directly, but this is the truth. There's so much information in a birth chart that it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. So you said you've committed to the Sidereal and the Div for Lib framework. So in my framework, as a beginner, you should be calculating your most prominent and dominant planets. That is the skill that you should perfect. Right? Now, getting an understanding, a deep and intimate understanding of the planets, the signs, and the houses is just going to take time. In my advanced study group that meets every 3rd Wednesday on Zoom, we're like taking it really slow. But because we're taking it so slow, we're able to go so many layers deep on what we're talking about. Right? What we're talking about, we can go so deep and come at it from a lot of different ways. So it said there were 2 questions in here, but there was really only one. If you all have questions you want to ask me, please ask. This is your time. I very rarely get on here to do this because I'll be busy. It's the end of the year. I'm doing a lot of writing, and tomorrow I will be back on preparing more 2024 content. I should have a hard copy of the guide by the end of this week. My hard proof, when I get it, I'll go live again to show you so that you can see it. This is a really good question. Sister BWA says, is the journal a good place to start for someone trying to find out if Div for Lib is for them? Absolutely. Absolutely. Knowing if an astrology system is good for you really comes down to, does it work when you use it? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. So the guide is you using the Div for Lib framework, and all of the everything is done for you. The only thing you need to know to use the guide is your sidereal rising sign. I go to great detail showing you how to get that piece of information from your sidereal birth chart. And I show you how to use that information all throughout the guide. So yes. I always suggest the guide for beginners because it bypasses any learning curve, right? You go straight into application and you're bringing your experience and your chart and matching it up with what's in the guide. There's some questions up here. Let's see. Sarah in the Woods says, any insights into Israel, Palestine based on Israel's birth chart? Yes. Where did I save that? in here, or or did I just save that somewhere else? Let me see. No, but I did send it to somebody. Okay. So, this is a really good question. Sarah in the Redwoods asked, any insights into Israel, Palestine, based on Israel's birth chart? Yes. So I think the time we have is accurate, and the I would say, I'm just going to talk about one thing. One thing in this chart that stands out to me based on the time that we have available from Astro Data Bank, which is about like 9:30, I guess, a.m., something like that. Is that right? Oh no, it's supposed to be 4. Either way, the moon and Saturn are in sidereal Cancer in the in Israel's birth chart. What is this? May 14th, 1948 at 4 p.m. in Jerusalem. And I want to pull up the guide again because I want to show you what it says for Cancer in the sign box. Okay? What does it say for Cancer here? Cancer is the feeler. It's a cardinal sign about power and control, body and bodily function. So when we're talking about mundane astrology, which is the astrology of large groups of people, we can think of body and bodily functions, and particularly the moon in this case, as the body of people, right? So the feeler, attunement, indulgence, addiction, to have your feelings and needs acknowledged. This is an old version. I did fix that mistake right there, so don't judge me. So yeah, so if Capricorn, right? Capricorn and Cancer are opposed. If Capricorn is the caretaker and Cancer is the feeler, who's Capricorn taking care of? Right? Cancer is representing the experience of having our feelings and needs acknowledged. That's the hope, that's the goal, that's the idea. And one of the big themes of this moment is that the pretense for this whole thing is that Israel has a right to defend itself. But if you look under the surface, what it's really saying is that Israel's feelings and Israel's needs are at the center and they take priority, and anyone else's needs or feelings are irrelevant or subservient to the needs. Israel, and it's fake, okay? We know it's fake, right? Because Israel is not a monolith. We know that the Zionists are opportunists who have taken advantage of the Western kind of imperialist allies. They've taken advantage of the Western imperialist allies, need to have a political and military and energy arm in the Middle East. And so Israel plays that role for them, right? But the Zionists have their own agenda. And part of how this is all being executed is everyone has to take care of Israel's feelings. Oh, Israel feels like it's threatening danger. Oh no, not the baby. Not the baby. Don't you say bad things about Israel. I'm going to take your job. You better be nice to Israel. Nope. Israel gets all the bombs and all of the bullets and all the guns and tanks that Israel needs because Israel is a baby and everybody should take care of Israel, right? We're talking about the moon and Saturn right on the midheaven of Israel's chart for being a colony, right? So the astrology of this is, I think, going into 2024, that Mars will be in Cancer in 2024 from August? No. How about I got the 2024 guide in front of me so I could just look. From, why is it skipping a page? Here we go. From from October all the way through the end of the year. Through some time in January. No, yes. Mars goes back into Gemini sometime in January 2025. So stick a pin in that. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Tall Bearded Iris asks, what planet makes the theme of 2024 acceptance and belonging? I'm gonna show you. She looks so good. I still might end up changing one of these fonts. Okay. I'm scrolling through all these pages, trying to get back to this table so I can show you. So, Taurus the connector. This is the sign. Taurus the connector. Self-approval is the gift of Taurus. Rejection is the wound, and docility is the coping strategy. Taurus just wants to be good enough to belong. Taurus just wants you to like them. Taurus disarms you so that they aren't perceived as a threat. If you have more questions about Taurus, you can ask. Afuera Zafe says, documenting your life is a big plus, and remembering past moments, spaces. Yes, so the journal part, so the guide is a calendar, workbook, and journal. The journal part really is in these questions, right? So for example, this is the 2023 guide. One of the questions is thinking back to 2020 all the way up till now. How have you underestimated yourself and what you're capable of? Ooh, that's a really great question. I didn't think about that. But that's right. So journal, it's self-reflective, but it's rooted in the astrology of the moment. It's kind of like if somebody knew what was going on in your life before it happened, and they wrote you a bunch of questions to help you make sense of what's going on in your life. So that you can look back, right? And now you have a whole record of these things, right? Other questions for December 2023. How have you overestimated yourself and what you're capable of? So on and so on and so on and so forth, okay? Jada Sarah Louise, in terms of what's happening right now and with folks' morals and values, is 2024 going to bring a lot of romantic relationship dynamic shifts? This is just me being nosy and curious. The shifts were this year with Venus retrograde. There's always going to be shifts because nothing is static. I think a better way to frame 2024 is really thinking about gender roles and their enforcement. And I'm going to leave it at that. I am Nicole. Melanie Davis says, basically, Israel has a right to an uber trauma response. The thing about that is that Israel knew about Hamas's plans before they happened. And they let it happen instead of trying to stop it so that they can do what they're doing, which is a genocide. The other thing to understand is that Zionists have appropriated and are taking advantage of the trauma of the Holocaust and what that has done to Jewish people, right? What that has meant for how we politically think about Jewishness, right? The Zionists don't care about anti-Semitism. They don't care about the Holocaust. They only care about it in so much as it is something they can use to do what it is that they're doing now. So, Safi Slays, referring to Israel, says the golden child, the firstborn son of the U.S. empire. Whew! Whew! That's kind of deep. That's very, very deep. And thinking of cycles in a really, really, really big picture, pull the lens way, way back, right? England thought they were going to come over here. Spain, all them other folks thought they were going to come over here. Well, they did. Killed all of the indigenous folks, most of them. And eventually the colonies here rebelled against the mother country. And Israel is doing something very, very, very similar, except for the interest that the U.S. and its allies have in the Middle East. The stakes are so much higher, right? England had a whole bunch of other colonies elsewhere, other lands, right? And as we saw eventually, you know, through the 1800s, they went all throughout Africa and India, you know, trying to do this a similar thing there, right? So, yeah. Tall Bearded Iris says, Jupiter is going into Taurus in 2024. What role does Jupiter play in your cosmic system? Cosmic system. I don't know how I feel about that word. Jupiter is context and meaning. So I have a table in the guide, Planets in Transit. And for Jupiter, it says, Jupiter makes meaning. Jupiter is the context for how we understand and interpret what's happening in the world and in our lives. The topics of the house it transits is the reference point for how we understand both new and old experiences and what those experiences say about who we are. So Jupiter has been in Aries since April of this year. Aries is all about power. It's all about autonomy. It's about control. It's about governance. It's about freedom of movement, right? You know, Aries by way of Mars is about disrupting the status quo. It is about our sense of personal power. And everything this year has been about power, labor power, right? That's been kind of the big thing. Even everything that's going on, you know, with Israel, you know, occupying Palestine. This is this is all about power, right? And the moment that we're in right now is really critical because we're about to have a bunch of planets move into Sagittarius. It'll be kind of fleeting through the end of December, but you know, most of January we'll have a stellium, which means 3 or more planets in sidereal Sagittarius. And this is going to give Jupiter and Aries like the first big like oomph that it's had since it's been in Aries. So part of the reason why we're seeing this awakening and this moment, astrologically wise, why we're seeing this awakening in this moment around power, why we're connecting the dots around power, right? We're interpreting everything within the context of power. We're interpreting everything within the context of personal power. What can you personally do to make an impact on what's happening to Palestine at the hands of Israel? You can participate in a boycott, divestment, or pressure your elected officials for sanctions. You can continue to post and talk about it. You can let people know where you stand, right? Everything right now is within the context of personal power. What are you doing? What are you doing? Once Jupiter goes into Taurus in 2024, and that's May 1st, and it's coming in, you know, by June 1st, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter will all be in Taurus at a new moon. And what do I have for that fill in the blank? Let me see. The fill in the blank for the Taurus new moon is planting seeds to enforce newly defined roles and expectations. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Maisha says if they cared about the Holocaust, the survivors wouldn't be impoverished in Israel. And they would be able to be like, oh, maybe we're doing like Hitler, but that's on purpose, right? They're doing that on purpose. Okay, let's see. What questions we got in the question box? Okay. Safi Slay says, I recall you gave like a top 3 themes for 2023. COVID denial, I think government failures. Will you do something similar for 2024? Yes. Let me show you real quick. So this, it's my pinned post. So I'm going to be elaborating on what's in here soon, but there's 5 themes in here. People power and civil disobedience, changing hierarchies of trust, policing violence and social cohesion, the cultivation of identity, and decolonizing our survival instincts. Oh, I forgot to tell y'all, there's going to be stickers. Y'all wanted the holographic stickers, so there are going to be stickers included with all of the printed and bound guide orders. But yeah, I will be doing a suite of content for 2024. The guide and the iCals are like the flagship cornerstone content for 2024. I've got some group readings. I usually end up doing a talk or presentation kind of outlining the major themes of the year. And then last year I did 12 Sidereal Astrology horoscopes for 2023, which featured a timeline that showed you, let me see if I can pull it up. Let me see if I can pull it up. 2023. Okay, so this is what it looked like. This was the horoscope I made for 2023. Are they all in here? Right, you see there's one for each sign. Right? I might structure them a little bit differently this year. These will probably be out in January. Yes, so just stay tuned. The 2023 talk I did is up on my YouTube channel if you want to review it. Okay, Shar says, how to go from individual-centric astrology to collective-minded astrology. How to look at a transit and consider what that means for the collective. So that's a really good question. In my mind, I don't really separate the two, right? Let me see if I can pull this back up. Why does it automatically do that? Okay. Already seeing that in so many marginalized communities and how there is a right way to be queer and a right way to be disabled. That is exactly what I'm talking about, right? We have to understand that our challenge here, oh man, oh, the guide is so good. I just want to read everything to you right now because it's in the guide talk. I wrote it down already. We have to understand we go from one extreme to another in our culture. We either say everybody has to be the same, and if you're different, you could just leave, or you're insane, or we're gonna lock you up, right? Or we're gonna kill you, right? If you're not the same, you don't belong, you're not one of us, you're a threat, right? And then we go to the other extreme where there is, everybody should just be free and autonomous, and it's like a faux individualism. Our work is really about how can we maintain our meaningful differences. One of the things I talk about a lot in the 2024 guide. Do I bring it up in my, I don't remember if I bring it up in, oh yeah, I talk about it in my word for 2024 too. But one of our challenges is how can we maintain our meaningful differences, right? How can we be more cognizant about what is a real threat and what is like a fabricated threat to manufacture a sense of social cohesion that's actually not rooted in any type of authentic sameness, but it's rooted in perceiving someone or something as a threat, right? So a lot of American culture is about having a common enemy, so that you don't really take the time to examine the fact that you've been indoctrinated into a cult, right? Right? Yes, or manufactured threats that create social division. Absolutely. So, for example, when I talk about decolonizing the survival instinct, one of the things that's important about 2024 is how many throwbacks to 2020 and 2021. The year starts out with a huge throwback to 2020 and 2021, right? Decolonizing our survival instincts is to recognize that our nervous systems have been co-opted. Our nervous systems do not protect our lives. Our nervous system protects capitalism. Our nervous system protects patriarchy. Our nervous system protects whiteness, right? Something else I talk about a lot in the 2024 guide is about this idea of whose feelings are centered. I've already talked about this with these Scorpio transits going on, right? Whose feelings are centered, whose ouch gets to determine the way that we shape society, whose ouch gets to determine how we collectively define what a threat is, right? So what we must understand is that to have colonized survival instincts, it means that our own ouch, our own pain, our own suffering, the reality of our material circumstances are subservient to anything that is a threat to the power and authority of whiteness, right? People like to call this Stockholm syndrome, which is fake, it's not real, it's not true. There's a phenomenon here, but it's not that. The phenomenon is that when you are in an abusive dynamic, right, the way to safety is to endear yourself to the abuser. If you are in an abusive dynamic that you cannot escape, right, the way that you get protection is to endear yourself to the abuser, to take on the qualities of the abuser, to be the caretaker of the abuser's dignity, self-worth, and self-image, right? This is, in any situation, we try to harness whatever power there is available, right? So in an abusive dynamic, the power available to us actually is to manage the feelings of our abuser. This is how we avoid violence. We avoid violence, hopefully, by managing the feelings of the abuser. We don't want to be perceived as a threat to the abuser's identity, power, or self-image. So if we replace abuser with capitalism and capitalist, you can understand why people bend over backwards and completely ignore their own poverty, housing insecurity, and lack of safety. They'll completely ignore it in order to defend the wealth hoarding habits of a billionaire or a celebrity, right? Because our nervous systems have been co-opted so that capitalism can continue. We perceive any threat to capitalism as a threat to our own survival and well-being. Why? Because capitalism is our mama. It's a big teat, right? No capitalism, we don't have what we need. Well, I need a job, and see, I need money, and no, actually, the only thing you really need is relationship. Capitalism, again, has co-opted your nervous system so that now your nervous system is triggered when you see 0.003 cents in your bank account. Your nervous system ain't triggered, right? And all of these other ways that your capacity to be in a safe community where the survival burden is shared has been threatened. Capitalism has completely destroyed that, right? So to decolonize our survival instincts is to be like, wait a minute, why am I defending a celebrity? Why? Why am I endeared to a billionaire whose very existence demands, it requires for me to not have enough? It makes no sense until you understand the way abuse dynamics work, until you understand the way cults and high control groups work. High control groups work because, oh man, I'm gonna leave it there because I'm gonna end up reading the whole guide today. Anyways, let me answer this question. How to go from collective individual-centric astrology to collective-minded astrology. How to look at a transit and consider what that means for the collective. So that's the guide, right? The whole guide. When you read a monthly summary in the guide, the monthly summary is breaking down what this means collectively. And because of the way Div for Lib works, there's no collective versus individual. If collectively we're dealing with themes of personal power and control, right? It means that individually we're, dealing with personal power and control. I don't think that it's much of an astrological technique as much as it is the capacity to recognize patterns and to ask questions. The question is, why is now everyone aware of and paying attention to what Israel is doing to Palestine? Why is it that there have been so many strikes? Why is it that there has been so much labor organizing? Why is it? When you can ask those questions, now you can see the pattern. What's the pattern here? The pattern is power. The pattern is control. The pattern is governance. The pattern is work. The pattern is labor, right? And so don't underestimate how much your individual experience of the astrology is not just a reflection of how it's manifesting for the collective. It is what comprises the collective manifestation. Did that make sense? Your individual experience of a transit is not just a reflection of how that transit is manifesting for the whole. Your individual experience is comprising what the whole manifestation is. My personal changing relationship with work, my personal changing relationship with my power, right, is a reflection of and what is comprising this collective shift with power, right? Absolutely, you got it. You got it. I don't think there's any more questions in here. Did y'all have any more questions? I know y'all love to hear me talk, and I just love to talk. So if you're just joining me, I'm on here talking about the fact that I've finished the 2024 guide, and it will be available for printed and bound pre-order and PDF download tomorrow. I've already got my iCals up. So the iCals, the guide, they all fit together, right? The reason why the iCals exist is because I use them in my phone. My iCals started as a personal tool for me. Even though I have astrology software, it is so much easier for me to just pick up the phone. It's like, oh, okay, the moon's in Leo. When's the moon going to enter Virgo? Moon's going to enter Virgo at 10:52 p.m. tomorrow. Great, right? It's so much easier to have that information on hand. Psalm of Shar says, are there opportunities for Div for Lib based organizing efforts? Not in any formal way. You know, you're one of a lot of people who have shared how my work has impacted them and how my work has influenced their own creative process. I'm not an organizer. I am an oracle. I am a creative. I am a teacher. I am a preacher. I am a writer. I'm a cultural critic. I'm a cultural worker. All of these things. I'm not an organizer. And so for me, it's just kind of like, if my work has impacted you, influenced you, keep doing what you're doing, right? I've been watching a lot of bell hooks because I've only read a little bit of All About Love, but the more that I learn about bell hooks, the more that we're very kindred spirits, and I come to a lot of the same conclusions through a different method and kind of with a different language, as things that she's taught and written about. But I believe this was in her talk at the New School with John A. Powell, and she was talking about the daily manifestations. The context of the question was about allyship, but she didn't really like that word. I don't really like that word either. I think the better question is, things don't have to be a grand gesture. We think that power and impact is a grand gesture, is a big planned, organized something. And I agree with bell hooks here that the power is in how we live our daily lives. How does this work impact your daily life? How does this work impact the way that you're showing up in your intimate relationships? How is this work showing up in your, perspectives and how you speak and think about disabled people? How, right? Like, in the Bible, Jesus talks a lot about one's faith really being rooted in how we treat the people who have no power, right? Our celebrity-obsessed culture is more concerned with protecting the brand, public image, and right to hoard of celebrities, right? But again, I'm not an organizer, so how I understand activism for me and my work, and how I hope to be a source of impact and influences in that way, is how is this work changing your relationships? How is this work changing the way that you show up on a daily basis for yourself? How is this work changing your relationship with your needs? Your need to belong, your need for validation, your need to be taken care of, right? We have the power to make the social fabric of our society by how we are willing to engage in our most intimate personal relationships and daily interactions, right? It doesn't always have to be so big. Even though it's subjective, do you have a suggestion on the best way to deal with having a planet in its weakened sign? So I have to push back against the language of weakened sign because I don't think that exists. I think that language is misleading. If I were to give you a reading and we would just focus on whatever that planet that's in a so-called weakened sign, if we would just focus on that planet, trust me, you would leave that reading feeling like that planet is not weak at all and that it's been running your whole life, right? If we can kind of like look at it in a vacuum. That's a really hard question. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's subjective as much as it requires context, right? So let's take the moon in Scorpio, for example. This is a planet in a sign where it is said in other systems to be debilitated, right? I don't particularly care for that language because I don't think it is descriptive of what's actually happened. If we're talking about the moon in Scorpio, or if you want to tell me what planet you're talking about in Part 43, that would actually be much better for me to actually more directly answer your question. And it'll probably be helpful for anybody who's here. You're not the only one with that placement. So if you're still here in Park, let me know what... Oh, shoot, I got to get my charger. Okay, while I'm going to get my charger, what's the placement in Park 43? Saturn and Aries. Great, let's talk about it. Not a weak placement at all. You know who has Saturn and Aries? Fucking Hitler. Will Smith has Saturn and Aries. Shaq has Saturn and Aries. Mariah Carey has Saturn and Aries, right? Let's not talk about weak. So, when you look at a really now everybody want me to read their placement. A really good way to understand your Saturn sign is to look at the opposing sign, right? Look at that opposing sign, and you know that's what you're being deprived of. I'm trying to find a table here. Oh, it's all the way down here. So, what is Saturn in a birth chart? I've been thinking a lot about this because it's such a slow-moving planet, and it's slow-moving planets means that there's something impersonal about it. If it's fast, it's very, very, very personal, right? Saturn deals with material reality and conceptual reality, okay? Saturn says, I know what's real based on the social or material consequences of my encounter with it, right? I know what something is. I know what reality is because of the consequences of my encounter with it. The challenge with Saturn in Aries, Saturn prefers to be in air or earth. Let's just talk about the earth side though. Earth is about realism. When you have Earth, when you're lacking Earth in your birth chart, unless you have an extremely exceptional talent that is valued by the capitalist market and the luck to have the social connections whereby that talent is recognized and validated, that's my disclaimer. That's my mitigating circumstance, right? Unless you got that, when you don't have Earth in your birth chart, it means you were deprived of being taught how to function in the quote real world, right? And the real world is capitalism. The real world is race. The real world is gender, right? Realism, right? And we're talking about Earth because Saturn is at home in Capricorn Earth, right? And what this is really talking about is having the privilege or opportunity, or somebody somewhere said, hey, this is how you navigate capitalism. This is how you navigate race. This is how you navigate class. This is how you navigate institutional spaces. This is how, you navigate gender. This is what's normal. This is what'll get you accepted, rejected. This is how you get a job, right? When you don't have Earth in your birth chart, you don't get that. And so people who don't have Earth in their birth chart really struggle to be employed. They struggle to translate their gifts or interests or talents into something that can feed or house them. These are people who can constantly find themselves dependent on other people who have a better grasp on how to navigate these systems. But it really is a form of deprivation in your environment where somebody was not available to, for example, decenter their addiction, decenter their trauma, decenter their grief, decenter their illness, their disablement, whatever it may be. They did not have the ability, skill, desire, resources to decenter their own physical or emotional needs or issues enough to focus on you, so that you get a sense of like, oh, this is how things work in the world, right? So let's go back to Saturn and Aries. Saturn is like, hey, you need to know where the limits are. You need to know where your capabilities, your impact, and your influence ends and begins, right? So a lot of times Saturn and Aries is talking about this deep lack of privacy that deprives you of protection in the form of having a safe space to learn what you're capable of without being scrutinized or without meeting the harsh consequences of reality. Does that make sense? So let's go back in real time. If you have Saturn in Aries and you're born in 99, 2000, maybe 2001, right? What is going on in the world that Saturn is in Aries during that time? What is the reflection? So the first thing that we see, now listen, Jupiter is in Aries right now, right? There's a probability that if you were born during that time period, you also have Jupiter in Aries, right? You're having your Jupiter return about 23, 24 right now, right? So one of the big things, Aries is about power. What am I capable of? I can do what I want. It's like, no, you can't. There's other people here. No, you're going to die if you jump off that bridge. So we're going to put a little barrier in place so you don't do that. Aries is missing all of that. Aries has been abandoned. Aries, people might be afraid of Aries because Aries talks such a big game, and so nobody is willing to challenge and say, hey, Aries, you can't do that. So if we go back to 2000, right, 99, 2000, in the Bush election, what happens? Bush steals the election. Who's going to check Bush? Bush is a white man with a legacy of political power in his family. Who's going to check Bush? Whole system colludes to give a white man power. Now, if you weren't old enough then to really understand, Bush was not qualified to be president. He went over Al Gore, who had just been the two-term vice president with Bill Clinton. He was a favorite. He won the popular vote, right? Bush was not qualified. And part of the kind of cultural context for his presidency is that he really didn't know what he was doing. He was being handled, and he was put in the position to be president as an instrument of a broader establishment's power, right? Which is not uncommon, but prior to Bush, you really had to have military experience or previous governing experience with a track record for your competency in order to be president, right? This is why our former presidents are all military generals or lawyers or former governors, senators, or mayors, right? So this is what was going on when you were born in 2000. That particular presidency shifted our collective relationship with political power in so many ways. So if we distill this down to the personal, and this is such a long damn answer. Why y'all be letting me talk so long on here? Lord have mercy. To distill it down to the personal, you know, Saturn and Aries, on the one hand, if we take someone like Will Smith, Saturn and Aries with Mars and Jupiter in Leo. His father was an alcoholic, military man, probably autistic, right? Just knowing, I've read his autobiography, just genius man, right? So much. His life story is really interesting. Anyways, Will Smith's father raised him in this way to instill in Will that there's nothing he can't do. Now, a lot of us get that platitude. Mind you, Will Smith has Mars and Jupiter and Leo in the 4th house, right? So the father stuff is really, really, really strong. And then you get some reception, right? Complex topic for another day. Anyways, Will Smith's father owned a refrigeration company in the 70s and 80s that delivered ice, repaired lamps, and refrigeration, had a storefront. One of the big stories in Will Smith's autobiography is that his father made him and his brother rebuild brick by brick the facade of the storefront. This was one of many ways that Will Smith's father didn't just say, there's nothing you can't do. He enforced this idea that what you think your limits are not your limits, and I'm going to show you. Now, this was shown in a lot of other ways as well that weren't, as we might say, constructive. So if you have Saturn in Aries, in what ways have you been deprived of an adult to give you a proper sense of your capabilities and what your limits are? How is this the container for your reality? How does this shape the way that you completely engage with the world, right? Now, the house, right, is really important. But I think what I'm trying to pull together here, particularly because Saturn represents the need for privacy and like satisfaction and enoughness. So like enough attention, enough time, enough food, enough material things, whatever it is. When Saturn is in Aries, there's something around insatiability. There's something around really not being able to distinguish between things that are structural and systematic features of society and things that are within your personal power, right? What is within your personal power? What are you actually capable of? Now, on some level, when you have Saturn and Aries, your kind of generational role in the culture is because you generationally don't have a conception of that limit. When you are coming of age, as we'll see in a few years, when Saturn returns to Aries and you have your Saturn return, you'll be able to, see beyond, act beyond, move beyond. You won't be confined by limitations that previous generations may not have been able to see, think, act, or imagine beyond. I hope that makes sense. That was long. I love talking, so, What about those folks who have 3-4 planets in their home sign? Feels like a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. Actually, it's the opposite. You're not thinking about a stellium. You're thinking about 3 or 4 planets in their home sign. You got two things going on here with a planet in its own sign. Either you got a really big bully, right? If it's just one, it's more likely that that planet's going to be a bully, right? If it's more than one, then there's a little bit of balance, right? Either way, in that situation, I'd really be looking for which planet is in the same sign as the ascendant or midheaven. That's what I would be looking for. Or which one is in the same sign as the sun and moon, right? My brain is trying to catch the pattern. Because there's a certain level of authority or hierarchy in the chart that gets a little complex when you have multiple planets in their home sign. And so you have to find other ways to discern which planet is kind of running the chart or the life of the native, right? So this is where calculating the prominent planets and getting that whole score for prominent and dominant planets comes together. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you. Let me see here. Oh, look, y'all. I haven't posted this on Instagram yet, but look at that. Oh, you guys, look, it's me. I've really been on my graphics lately. Okay, this is my website. So we're at shop.thepeoplesoracle.com. We're going to click Learn Astrology, and we're going to go to Calculating Prominent and Dominant Planets. Dominance and prominence give designations to planets. These designations help determine which planets have the most influence in your sidereal birth chart. Blah, 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 blah. Dominant planets are calculated by examining the concentration of signs in your sidereal birth chart. Dominant planets say who the people are that have had control of your circumstances and have had responsibility for you. They tell you what the dominant experiences have been in your relationships. Prominent planets are calculated by examining the position of the planets in your sidereal birth chart, proximity to the ascendant, midheaven, or descendant. Prominent planets say who has had power in and over your life and over your environment. Prominent planets often explain why you might resonate with the interpretation of certain sidereal zodiac signs. Even though you do not have any planets occupying those signs, it is because their ruler of said signs are placed prominently in your sidereal birth chart. $10. That's what you want. Okay. So yeah, a lot of people want me to talk about Scorpio moon. If y'all are still here, let's talk about Scorpio moon. I love talking about Scorpio moon because it's the boogeyman, right? So first, what's the moon? The moon is your need for comfort and safety. The moon is your need to be taken care of. Your moon is telling you, how are you fussed over? What is the relationship that your caregivers had with your needs? I'm about to put my my Cash App up here. So if y'all want to tip me while I'm on here running my mouth, you're absolutely welcome to do so. So the moon is our experience of mothering, and our experience of mothering can be can be boiled down to what is the relationship that the people in my environment had with my need for comfort and safety? Was it prioritized? Was it completely ignored? And how was I responded to when I was in distress? Right? What is the relationship that my environment and the people in it had to or with my physical and emotional distress? Physical and emotional distress is normal. It's gonna happen. That's what it is, right? But the sign of your moon is answering all of those questions. So let's go back to the guide. Let's go back to the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide and look at the Sidereal Zodiac Signs table. So Scorpio, the protector, to feel emotionally safe. What's up, Pooh? I'm on live. You need your inhaler? Do you think you should take 8 puffs? Okay, you gotta come here. Hold on, y'all. I'll be back, y'all. I'm gonna come back and talk about Scorpio moon. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just Okay, thank you. All right. I was commenting on Ivana Rebecca said, what a beautiful example of mothering moon things it seems. Absolutely. So my son communicated to me that he was in distress. And that was a perfect example. How did I respond to him when he was in distress? I was able to suppress, set aside what I'm doing, change my focus, disregard for that moment my desires, needs, and feelings, and focus on him, right? So when you have moon in Scorpio, here's the big question. How are you responded to in your distress, right? Well, if this says here that Scorpio's big thing is to feel emotionally safe, we know that that's the thing that Scorpio was deprived of. Scorpio was deprived of feeling emotionally safe. Moon in Scorpio speaks of experiences of being alienated emotionally, abandoned, or just left alone with your feelings. Oftentimes, Scorpio moon specifically is talking about the threat is in the house. The danger is coming from the people or person who is supposed to be your protector. Often, Scorpio moon can speak to the mother being abused, right? The mother being abandoned, and what that means for her capacity to be an emotional safe space for you and to be your protector. Does that make sense? Right? So Scorpio moon, Scorpio has the role or the title of the protector, not because they are innately a protector. It is because they were deprived of protection from the people who were supposed to be their protector. They were left emotionally vulnerable and exposed. When they were in distress, either their caregiver was the source of the physical or emotional distress, and so could not play the role of abuser and protector at the same time, right? Or it is that they were subject to some kind of abandonment or abuse that made them emotionally unavailable, right? So with Scorpio moon and any moon sign really, there's this question of how capable are your caregivers of balancing their own need for safety and comfort and to be taken care of with your need for safety and comfort and to be taken care of. For Scorpio moon, there is often a complete lack of that feeling that you are going to be taken care of, right? With any moon in a water sign, so Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, Sidereal, dead for lib, TM, there's often this sense that your body or your needs are the problem, right? The thing that we need is to be felt. In the moment where my son needed me to come in and take care of him, he needed to be felt. I needed to be able to acknowledge his distress and not take it personally. I needed to be able to center him and his feelings and set mine aside, right? And so when I talk about Scorpio being the protector, particularly with regard to Scorpio moon, the real question is, In what ways were you deprived of protection? In what ways were you deprived of being taken care of? And as you grow into adulthood, how do you keep finding yourselves in situations where you're not being taken care of and you're deprived of protection, right? Remember at the beginning of this live, I talked about how our birth charts are a reflection of our environments. Our birth charts are a reflection of the environments we were born into and had to survive. Our birth charts are showing us the way that our needs were related to. So if your need to be taken care of was related to, right, via Scorpio, if that's the defining relationship that your environment, that Scorpio relationship had with your moon, your need to be taken care of, there's this way that actually being taken care of feels like a threat. Being comfortable and being safe for Scorpio moon feels like a threat. The environment that Scorpio moon is equipped to survive is one where there is no caretaking, is one where there is constantly the threat of violence or constantly the threat of some type of deprivation, right? So Scorpio moon can find themselves in situations where it's much more familiar and comfortable to be in situations where that match the childhood environment, that match the danger, the vulnerability of being exposed, the lack of security, the alienation, the solitude. And anytime somebody tries to get close to Scorpio in a caretaking relationship, right, unless there are mitigating factors in the chart, when someone tries to get close to Scorpio to take care of Scorpio, I got it, right? Scorpio can sabotage those relationships, right? Sabotage those relationships. Yep, and Eric Chavon says, and alienating themselves, right? So when you see here where it says alienation and isolation for Scorpio, right? And that's the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide for people who are just joining. That alienation is the experience of not being felt, of being in distress and being abandoned in your distress, or being punished for your distress, or your protector being the source of the distress, right? And so isolation is the way that we internalize that experience. Isolation means to not permit closeness, right? Because for Scorpio moon, the caretaker was the source of the distress and harm. Hey, Richie. Metallic Behavior says, so how does this deprivation experience by Scorpio moon contrast with how you talk about Capricorn? Very, very, very good question. So first of all, we're talking about water versus earth. And so when we have moon in a water sign, safety means to ultimately, right? There's trauma and all kinds of things that make this difficult or prevent this. When our moon is in the water sign, the thing we need the most to feel safe is to be felt, right? I need to be felt. Now, we all need to be felt, right? But for Scorpio, to be felt is to be protected, to be separated from the source of harm. Scorpio moon specifically is in a bind because to separate from the source of harm is to also separate from who and what is supposed to be the caretaker. the protector, right? It's a double bind. For Capricorn moon, we're talking about Saturn and Earth. And so for Capricorn, we're talking about there not being enough, right? There's not enough emotional attention available. Is it because mom is sick? Is it because mom's working? You know, is it because we're poor? Is it, you know, what is it? We don't have enough, right? Now, Capricorn moon can kind of go two ways. There can be deprivation for fear of dependence. Capricorn moon, so where Scorpio moon has the experience of caretaking always coming with abandonment or violence, right? And so to get that comfort and protection and safety, it's like there's nowhere for Scorpio to turn, right? For Capricorn, in terms of how this manifests in adulthood after childhood, for Capricorn moon, we're talking about the fear of running out, the fear of there not being enough, rationing and denying oneself in order to save or preserve for the future. We have a Capricorn stellium in January and February 2024, and I talk extensively about Capricorn as the caretaker in the January monthly summary in the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide. So if you're going to download your PDF or get your, make your printed and bound pre-order and get your complimentary PDF, when you get it, go and read January. And I talk a lot about the caretaker for Capricorn. So all of this to say, Scorpio has a heightened sense of threat perception. And this is so deep. This is so deep, right? Because if the caretaker is also the source of the harm, and we come to be in relationship with our bodies based on that relationship with the caretaker, Scorpio can internalize that their body is actually the source of harm. And we know all the different routes that can go down in terms of self-harm, in terms of risk-taking, in terms of all of these ways that Scorpio can kind of constantly put themselves in harm ways, right? So for Capricorn, Capricorn often finds themselves in the position of being a caretaker of someone else, right? Does the parent have an addiction? Does the parent, is the parent emotionally immature? Is the parent emotionally unavailable, right? There's a lot of being ignored with Capricorn. There's a lot of like, nobody's even paying attention to you. Your feelings, right? No one's paying attention to your feelings, your body, your bodily functions, right? And so because our body and bodily functions, our feelings are ignored, what does Capricorn grow up to do? Ignore their own feelings. See, for Scorpio, they're so loud. For Scorpio moon, their feelings are so loud, right? That Scorpio isolates because that's the only way that they cannot feel. The intensity, that fear of vulnerability and exposure, right? And also that threat of abandonment or that threat of the person who is their loved one turning into the source of harm or violence towards them, or just abandoning them physically or emotionally. Does that make sense? Did y'all have other questions? What other questions y'all got? Hey, Elise. What other questions y'all got? Bingo, metallic behavior. So we're talking about a sign that's waiting for the other shoe to drop versus a sign that had no shoes. That is a very, very good yet simplistic way to say that. Very, very, very good way to say that. Or Capricorn only got one pair of shoes, so they got to figure out how to work with them shoes, right? This resourcefulness of Capricorn is about the necessity of suppressing or repressing one's bodily or emotional needs, right? In order to preserve what is available, right? Ooh, I had to turn that off. I don't know how y'all be having y'all screens on without like the night shift or like the warming colors, because I'll be feeling like I'm gonna go blind with these bright screens. Y'all got any other questions? Hello, 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 Blanca, Violetta. You're welcome, Metallic Behavior. I mean, if y'all don't have no questions, I could always go do something that doesn't require me to look at a screen. You're welcome, y'all. You're welcome, Jenny L. Kearns. You're welcome. Anyways, tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m. Yes, this will be saved. 10 o'clock, excuse me, 8 a.m. Central Time. You will be able to get your 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide. Hey, SD Integrating Intimately. People are just asking like general astrology questions. People are asking questions about 2024. Hey, Maddie. People are asking questions about the 2024 guide. This may be silly. Is there compatibility in sidereal? Yes. And let's always make this distinction, right? There are a lot of different ways that astrologers use the sidereal zodiac. Divination for Liberation Sidereal Astrology is the framework that I've created. And in Div for Lib Astrology, everything we're talking about is relationship. Everything we're talking about is relationship. Your own chart is telling you how you're in relationship with yourself and your own needs based on how people were in relationship with you. So in terms of compatibility, I think that that's like a really interesting topic, because compatibility is not a fixed thing. Compatibility is between who you are now and who the other person is now, right? And by your coming together, you are shaping and changing each other. And that shaping and changing can grow deeper into compatibility, or it could be a compatibility that you have to work for, or you might become incompatible, right? So two people can have charts that show some important connections, or, the timing could be such that they have this connection and this is the moment where it's being realized. That time may never come. So connections between a chart are not always an indication of an inevitable relationship, right? There are people who I will never meet who I have placements that can be deemed compatible. It's always really important to understand an individual chart. So if you're just joining, I've been talking about how I've been watching some Bell Hooks interviews lately. And one of the things that's really curious to me about Bell Hooks is She wrote a lot about love and a lot about belonging and relationship and community and all of this stuff, right? But she, spoke often about her own struggles with finding love and being in kind of that deep, intimate relationship. And she's a really good example where there are two things to consider concerning particularly romantic relationship and on some level even friendship, intimate relationship. Let's say intimate relationship. There are two things to consider. What is the individual person's personal hierarchy of needs as indicated by their sidereal birth chart? For Bell Hooks, I think for her convictions, her politics, and being taken seriously as an intellectual writer and speaker were way more important to her in the grand scheme of things than romantic partnership, intimate romantic partnership. Meaning that her convictions and her need to see her politics mirrored back to her within her partnerships and to be taken seriously as an intellectual and writer and speaker and teacher, and to have the freedom to do those things was more important than than intimate romantic partnership, particularly with the types of partners she had access to, right? Meaning that if Bell Hooks were born in 2000 instead of 1952, she would have access to more partners, right? Because the evolution of relationships, politics, culture is such that she would be more likely now to find a partner whose politics were in alignment with hers. If she's dating cisgender men, right? She might be more able to find a partner who allows her to, have her intellectual pursuits and take up all the space that she needs to take up without feeling threatened by that. But somebody born in 1952, maybe if she had have expatriated and went to Europe, she could have found her. But again, her politics weren't going to let her do that, right? She felt a responsibility. So that's part one in considering what a chart has to say about relationships. You really have to consider the individual chart and that individual person's kind of disposition. I'm like that. My politics, like for me personally, anyone who's in proximity to me, in intimate relationship for the most part, I cannot help but to take their politics personally, right? Because that has real material and emotional impact for me. I don't see them as just ideas or principles. I see a person's politics as informing their capacity for care, right? And so for me, I will be alone before I partner up with someone whose politics offend me. This might mean that I might never partner up. This might mean that maybe later in life I'll partner up. I don't know, right? But because this is such a rigid part of my chart, it's probably not going to change, right? Like if you're out here homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic, if you out here living it up for the patriarchy, if you have no anti-capitalist critique, we just don't have anything in common, right? What are we even going to talk about? I don't want to hear you policing women's behavior and clothing. Like it's not happening. Like I'm not going to listen to that shit, right? So in your individual chart, it's really so important. Now, in terms of looking for markers of compatibility, this is my secret sauce. Now, the secret sauce requires you to have calculated a person's prominent and or dominant planets, right? I'm Jupiter. I am Jupiter in Sagittarius. I am, Venus in Sagittarius. I am Sagittarius rising. I am Moon in Pisces. I'm Jupiter, right? And so in order to be close to me, you got to have your Jupiter has to be good. Because your relationship with your Jupiter, how your Jupiter is configured in your chart, is how you're going to relate to me, right? So a pretty rough but accurate correlation there, right? So if you're not curious, if you don't connect the dots, if you don't have an informed politic, if you just accept things at face value all the time and you don't try to figure out how things are connected, I'm probably not going to have anything to talk to you about, right? And there may be another relationship dynamic between us. Maybe I'm a teacher to you, or maybe I'm your astrologer or whatever. But in terms of the intimate relationship, right? So you can kind of tell the relationship that you're going to have with someone or not based on how your prominent or dominant planet is situated in their chart, right? And vice versa, though. How is their prominent or dominant planet situated in your chart? Otherwise, CNM says, so if I'm Venus Libra, then that needs to be a healthy connection. So this is a really, really, really oversimplification that's not necessarily accurate or helpful. Again, I can't say without looking at your whole chart. I can't say, because I don't even know what that means, to be honest. Just be honest. Okay. How can people remember and not get enticed in forgetting who their enemies are next year? Ooh, hold tight, Black Moon Rose. When I post my post, your answer is in there. 2024, where is it? I'm gonna publish this in audio and written format. But it's also the December summary and the 2024 guide. So when you download or pre-order your 2024 guide tomorrow, go and read December. That should be the first thing you do, because that's your word for the year, right? The answers are in there. Don't worry. It's in there. I'm not gonna go over it right now. Oops, I didn't mean to wave to you, Estella Skaja, but hey. In Sidereal, how does it affect you to have retrogrades in your chart, especially multiple? I have Mercury and Saturn. So one thing to understand about a retrograde, it is not this kind of nebulous metaphysical condition of a planet that has like some, I don't know. Like people say, oh, I got Mercury retrograde in my chart, so that means Mercury retrogrades don't bother me. Nah. Mercury is retrograde half the year. So like, what does that even mean, right? Anytime we're talking about like a retrograde, or we're talking about degrees of an aspect, or we're talking about your north and south node and eclipses, these are all time-sensitive, time-based parts of your chart. Meaning that we're in a Mercury retrograde shadow right now, right? Somebody's born today. A week and a half from now, Mercury's going to be retrograde. Somebody's going to be born. It's going to be a bunch of people born, right? Pay attention. What is Mercury and Sagittarius doing collectively? Everybody's got their bullhorn. We are interpreting everything that anyone says or doesn't say within the context of their convictions. What does Beyonce's words or lack of words mean about, her politics with regard to Palestine, right? How are we interpreting people's words or silence as a statement about their politics? And how are we seeing the ways that everything that we say or don't say is also a statement about our politics, right? When Mercury is in Sagittarius, our need to be heard and understood is subservient to our need to have others believe as we do, right? So someone's gonna have Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius in their birth chart when they're born a week from now. That retrograde is not something intangible and woo. It is a statement about the political climate that they're born in, right? And in the lives of the people that baby is born into, that Mercury retrograde is going to have a very specific expression. And when we look at the birth chart and I see where that Mercury retrograde is, and I look to see, where did Mercury station direct? Where did Mercury station retrograde? What was, this particular Mercury retrograde, Mercury's going to trine Jupiter in Aries 3 times, really, really juicy trine, right? First one is towards the end of this week. Right, so if I'm looking in your birth chart, I need all of that context to interpret Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrograde is not a singular static thing in a chart. It is indicative of a series of movements that were occurring in relationship to the rest of the sky or the rest of your chart, right? So there is I can't say that there's some kind of like specific effect of having Mercury retrograde in your birth chart. I really can't say that without the context of the rest of the chart. It has to be taken into context in the rest of the chart, has to be taken into context in real time, as in what was going on in 2000 or whenever you were born and Mercury was retrograde. Not just in the world, but I can look in your chart and like, oh, this is what was happening in the lives of your mother or a sibling or your grandmother or your father or something like that. This is creating the circumstances and the environment that you have to survive. It is creating the circumstances that are shaping how you ultimately will relate to yourself and your own needs, right? So that's that on that. Speaking of Jupiter, how does it affect the 12th house or vice versa? So real quick, a planet in a house is telling you where you have to go in order to get that need met. Jupiter is the need for things to make sense. Things have, there's a pattern here, right? In the in the 2024 guide, Sagittarius is the pattern seeker. No, Sagittarius is the pattern maker, and Sidereal Pisces is the pattern seeker, right? So in our own birth charts, Jupiter is talking about the relationship that we have with certainty and the need for making sense. Need for things to make sense, like to add up. The dots have to connect. Right? Now the 12th house the 12th house is a house that has to do with belonging, right? And when we have planets in the 12th house, there's often some type of physical or emotional estrangement with the family of origin that has to do with the planet in the 12th house, right? So if it's Jupiter in the 12th house, right? Again, need a little bit more context. You don't have to give it to me, but in order to really create a full picture here, right? I would need to know what houses Jupiter rules, meaning where is Sagittarius and Pisces, right? And the ruler of those houses would be in the 12th house. And so the people or experiences or topic, right? You got to go to the 12th house to find that, right? So Fifi says, it's conjunct my moon in Taurus and I'm estranged from my mom and family. So in Taurus, that means if you want to belong, if you want to be liked, if you want to be accepted, right? The people who you feel an affinity towards and feel the same as, you got to go far away from family, right? You know, moon in Taurus or moon in the 12th house in general can be indicative of someone who just moves far away from their family, right? What is that? That means Cancer's in the 2nd house, right? So in order to like make money or get a job or have any type of material security and stability, you have to leave your family of origin. You have to leave your home place, right? Because home is in the 12th house, right? Or even if you stay near your family of origin, right, there's a certain type of way that you kind of have to be somebody you're not, maybe, in order to get that need met. Remember, the moon is always the need to be taken care of and the need for comfort and safety, right? So if that's in the 12th house, right, it's a really tough situation because it's kind of saying, yeah, your family is not where you're going to be taken care of. Strangers might take care of you, right? People who are not family, a land that is not your home, where you don't necessarily speak the language or aren't necessarily familiar with the cultural norms, right? That's where you find home. That's where you find safety. That's where you find belonging, right? Moon and Jupiter is often adoption too. So that could also mean like getting citizenship in another country, right? Okay, I'm gonna call it a wrap here today. I'll be back a few times this week as the guide is coming out tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for tuning in with me. I'll save this live. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.